What is up, everybody? Welcome to Sports and Torch presentation of Last Call, Week 11 of the college football season. Jason, Laurence, great to see y'all smiling faces tonight. You know, guys, some weekends they just hit different. They just hit different. All the feelers are there, and this was just one of them. Quick recap: Friday night, starting off, three of us and the children at Morgan Wallen. Fantastic show. Rolling into UGA Ole Miss senior night, just spectacular night under the lights in at the Classic City. Laurence, you were kind enough to host us at your house. And then Sunday, Graham Stein, I can say, is fresh off the Jason injury report, back on the field playing, and his team took home a championship. So, guys, you can't do much better than that, in my opinion, for those 3 days. So I am smiling. I'm riding high, enjoying a cocktail. How the hell are you guys?
It was a great weekend, and I think I sent out a link today. This guy, I don't know who it was, but he said it best. He said the biggest status symbol in college football today is for Georgia to actually care enough about you to blow you out. The Dogs looked like the best team in the country once again. Great weekend, as you mentioned. Morgan Wallen had everyone here to watch the Dogs on Saturday night, and then the U10 Kessler Firecrackers took home a 23-20 win yesterday at East Marietta basketball. So yeah, winners all around.
Larry, you're one hell of a coach. That's impressive.
Hey man, got skills to pay the bills, baby.
Morgan Wallen Friday night started the weekend off nicely, though the concert was about 17 hours long. I think we'll get into that later. But definitely a great night in a great venue. Saturday night, 52-17, just utter domination. The stadium looked extremely hype. I wish I was there. I couldn't stomach the 3 o'clock arrival home on Saturday night after a long night, so I did not go. But that game was just fun. I think the way to describe it is just total dominance, a total team effort, and quite frankly, I think that's what we've expected all season long. So, Larry, that's a great quote or whatever you found there regarding Georgia giving a shit enough to kick your ass. That sums up the season.
Well, we talk about every week. It's right, like that long con that Graham Coffee spits out, and each week is approached as a different practice. And you actually saw it all come together on Saturday night with the gap zone scheme blocking, all that type of stuff that you get frustrated of running it between the tackles for no gain. And then all of a sudden you have your offensive line create huge, massive holes for Dejon and Kendall Milton. And then I think I read something today that an Ole Miss staffer actually reported that Carson Beck was touched literally 0 times on Saturday night. So the offensive line was a brick wall. All these things that the Dogs have been working on really came together on Saturday night for a pure ass kicking of the Rebels from Oxford, Mississippi.
Yeah, Carson said after the game in his interview that the only reason why his jersey was even the least bit dirty with grass stains because he slid when he ran for a first down, to echo the point you made, Laurence. But, we mentioned last year in LA how that was a 4-quarter just Georgia celebration and infomercial. I kind of felt similar about Saturday night, like the celebration at home. Senior night for a senior class that has lost 1 or 2 times and won 2 championships. I mean, just a special group. You had Brock Bowers coming back. We'll spend a whole segment on that, but what a freaking Superman that guy is. And then you had all the dignitaries in the house. You had Coach Richt, you had Jordan Davis, you had Nolan Smith fresh off the game day set. You had David Green, DJ Shockley. Everybody was there. You had Bubba Watson, golfers, you name it, they were there. Kirby even said at one point, he looked around, he's like, shit, I got to make sure we put up a good effort in front of these guys. Everybody loves Georgia. Everybody's proud to be a Dog, and they were all front and center, ESPN, primetime, Saturday night. I smiled for 4 hours. All we said at the end was, please let Brock Bowers get that touchdown to top it all off. And there you go. He got it. So what more can you want on a Saturday night?
Even Goldberg was in the building. And not to mention the number 1 recruits in the 24, 25, and 26 recruiting class were there. This was a show that Kirby, I mean, this just goes to the point we talk about every single week. There's nobody better at their job than Kirby is at his job. His fingerprints were all over this from the get-go, with in between quarters, bringing out all of the celebrities, all the honors. Stetson was back. All the recruits were in the building. This is truly how a college football game should be displayed under the lights.
It set up very nicely, obviously, having the 7 o'clock game, obviously the biggest game in Athens this season. I expected an offensive explosion. I think I said we definitely score over 40 points. What I didn't expect was it would be as easy as as it was. I'm sorry. They even exceeded my expectations there. We could have put up 75 easily. I didn't expect the defense to shut down Ole Miss the way they did. Ole Miss came out on that first drive and they scripted it well, which obviously is somewhat, I don't want to call it a weakness of Georgia's, but it's a vulnerability. How about that? They scored 2 of their first 3 possessions. And I think that their last touchdown was scored with like 10 minutes left in the second quarter, something like that. And then they barely scored again. They kicked a field goal, and frankly, they were lucky to get that field goal. We scored on our first 4 possessions, touchdowns on our first 4 possessions. We left some points on the board at the end. If you want to be hypercritical, maybe that last possession of the first half, we left some points on the board there. But the whole fourth quarter, I'm surprised DJ Shockley didn't get it in the fourth quarter, or his kid. It was just utter dominance. There were people on the field whose name I didn't know, and I was glad to see that. But the defense really stepped up. There's not a better secondary in the country. The past 2 weeks, you've shut down Trey Evans and Luther Burden with Kamari Lassiter. Javon Bullard was all over the place. He was just absolutely awesome. And CJ Allen, what a job stepping in for Jamon Dumas-Johnson. He had the first maybe series or second series. He did get beat on one pass play, whatever, but he was a dog. He was all over the place. And I got to say, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm not being original here, but he's probably the next great Georgia inside linebacker.
Let me hop in real quick. Let me hop in real quick because I want to throw an underhand toss to Laurence to back up your point, Jason, about this first drive that seems to be an Achilles heel for us. Between fireball shots, celebrating every score, Laurence came to a epiphany about why it is that these teams are scoring on the first drive. Laurence?
Gans, I feel like you think it's a vulnerability. I actually think it's a little bit of a little rope-a-dope. We're trying to lull them into a false sense of security while we're trying to figure out some of their tendencies. Now, that being said, we did miss a few tackles, but I feel like this is like 4 straight games, 4 opening drive touchdowns. And to back up your points about the defense, Gans, 185, Ole Miss gained 185 yards and had 14 points after their first 3 drives, and they had 60 yards combined on their next 6 drives. And between Bullard, Tyke Smith, and Malachi Starks, they had a combined 4 targets against them with 0 receptions. I mean, Lassiter Island is a place that nobody wants to mess with. This team's awesome. We have 20 deep on our defense that can play at any given time. That would be our second and third string would be first stringers at 95% of the schools around the country.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I don't think we're playing rope-a-dope. It did cross my mind, though. I will say, I was sitting around yesterday, and I'm like, Kirby he leaves nothing to chance. Everything, as Josh was pointing out, every single time out, the guy's fingerprints are literally on everything. I think he does delegate well, but everything goes through him. There's not a decision being made that he doesn't. So I thought about that. Maybe he's playing chess. But I just think, look, it's teams have a whole week to prepare and really put their best 10 plays on the field. It's like running a 2-point conversion, right? You've got your 2 best plays. I think that's all it is. And once you get into the flow of the game, I think Kirby and staff are just much better at scheming and seeing what's going on. And
look, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face, punched in the mouth, right? And their plan is 10 plays deep. They get their 7 points. It's cute, and then Kirby just punches the shell in the mouth. Let's just transition to Brock Bowers for a minute, because my goodness, what else can you say about the guy? Just when you think that he has done everything that is possible to be done, he goes and shows out 26 days post tightrope surgery and plays like he didn't miss a beat. In today's day and age, guys that have his sort of potential future, first rounder, top 10, whatever, they shut it down after an injury, right? They say, what do I need to come back and risk further injury and slip in the draft? And he went the exact opposite. He went hyper aggressive. He said, what can I do to get back as quickly as I can? That tells you about him, his character, his family. And it tells you about what Kirby has built, that the number 1 player, maybe in the history of the program, is fighting to get back onto the field as quickly as he could. So golf clap to everybody involved, the medical staff, him for making the decision. I wasn't in that building, but can you imagine what went down when he came running out? So again, the story of Brock Bowers, it's long, it's distinguished. We were there in Nap in the beginning, and my God, man, love the guy. Number 1 for me.
Yeah, you have Brock Bowers coming back after 26 days, playing like his hair's on fire. Then you have guys like AD Mitchell who have a 10-week recovery from a high ankle sprain. Brock Bowers, plain and simple, is just awesome. I hope that when it's all said and done, he is in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I know he has literally zero chance to win because he missed 3 weeks or two. Was it 2 games he missed?
Two.
Whatever it was, he missed whatever he missed. He's not doesn't have a chance to win, but I hope they at least honor him as being the absolute best player in college football by giving him the phone call and letting him come to New York in December.
I agree with that. I don't think they will, but I do agree with you there. So three things about Brock. One, we heard all week that, or from the middle of the week, that he was going to play. It was a game time decision, but it sounded like he was going to play. And I was skeptical. I thought that they'd run him out there because effectively it's his senior night, even though he's not a senior, and just let him get that curtain call. Remember, Kirby did it against TCU when he let Stead have his curtain call and then the whole defense. So I thought that was probably a possibility. Kirby doesn't F around, so I guess let's just go ahead and take that off the table. Second, to your point, he's back out there after the tightrope surgery, blocking like a savage. Forget about his route running for a second. Forget about that touchdown catch, and probably the most impressive one was like that 30-yard he had. Forget about that. The way he was blocking, but probably most important, and Herbstreit was talking about this during the game, is just the attention that he commands when he's out there. They're bracketing him. They're having safety coming over the top. You have to have a plan. You can try to account for him. You can't always. But what does that do? It opens up Ladd McConkey. It opens up Dom Lovett. So just having him out there was just awesome. And I don't know if we'll ever see another one like him again.
Well, tip of the cap to you, Jason, for saying a week or two ago when we were talking about injuries that you actually looked at it the other way and said, hey, we're getting healthier. We're getting our guys back. For the first time all year, we saw him. We saw McConkey. We saw Mims on the field, just creating, as you said, just night matchup nightmares. And what do you do? I mean, what do you do if you're a defense? Nothing.
I'm going to quote a wise man. I'm going to quote a wise man who said, "We have an embarrassment of riches." I don't forget who it was that said that, but if you look at what we rolled out there with Bowers and McConkey lined up on one side, and then two former number ones from the transfer portal, Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas on the other side, Carson Beck legitimately had 4 number 1 targets lined up wide with Kendall Milton, who arguably had his best game of his college career, ran like a beast on Saturday night. And then Dejon Edwards, who just casually rips off 5-6 yards of play. I mean, the fact that we had 311 yards passing and 300 yards rushing, an average 10 yards per play. It's an embarrassment of riches, Jason.
And I want to say something because Josh touched on it. I mean, how good is Carson Beck? Now, granted, the offensive line, I mean, was absolutely fantastic, phenomenal. We've said all season, if that guy has a clean pocket, he is surgical. He's going to pick you apart. But he's just so calm, cool, and collected. He puts it on a rope. Again, the knock on him is he doesn't throw a great deep ball. Should the one to when Ladd absolutely torched that cornerback who left his jockstrap on the field, should it have been a touchdown? Yeah, we got it down to the 3-yard line. We punched it in. If he could, hit a long ball here or there, and maybe he's coming into it. Maybe he's getting more comfortable. Maybe that, look, the long con of Carson Beck. That offense is really unstoppable. It's the best offense of the country by far. Someone at me.
Fire Bobo, Jason. Fire Bobo. Hashtag.
Never came out of my mouth.
I'll answer your question about Carson Beck with two things that we discussed. Number one, we're actively discussing whether he will come back for one more year or enter the draft because he's probably going to be a top 3 to 5 quarterback off the draft first rounder. Number one. Number two, I would take him over Ritter or Heineken, whatever the hell his name is, tomorrow or today on the Falcons. So there you go. I mean, we said it on the first show this year, like we're all rooting for Beck. He did it right. He stuck it out. He's the best quarterback in the country. Come at me, right?
So I'll throw down the gauntlet right now, and I hope I'm wrong. I think he goes into the draft. I think that he's probably a late first-round pick, a second-round pick. Unfortunately, I don't see him back in Athens next year, and I hope he leaves with 3 rings.
So what do you have? You have Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Carson Beck.
It's a great class.
Yeah. I mean, some people will say Bo Picks.
Speaking of quarterbacks
and Michael Penix.
Don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole here, but I think it is worth mentioning that Stetson Bennett, as y'all said, was on property Saturday night. First time we've seen him back in Athens. All the speculation, rehab, he's injured. He got hurt. We got hurt wrestling in downtown Athens. Like, we hear so much stuff. He looked fine. We got reports that the suite he was in, all the booze was removed from the suite. What do we think's going on with Stetson Bennett, man? It's the craziest thing ever.
It's like when Vinny Chase came back from rehab and Johnny Drama replaced all the booze with non-alcoholic booze. I don't know. He was back for the first game of the season, which was pretty awesome when he sat in the stands, just like with random people. I'm not even going to speculate. I wish him well. I hope he has a long NFL career.
Very
Yeah,
politically correct of you there, Mr. Gantz.
I'd like to see him get the helmet and shoulder pads back on. I'd like to see him compete for a spot on the NFL roster. He looked good. He looked healthy. He was happy to be in Athens. They showed a clip after he received the Burlsworth trophy. He looked over to his side and said, you could read his lips. He said, "This is awesome." So he got a conquering hero's welcome back between the hedges. And listen, I wish nothing but the best for Stetson. He is a damn good dog.
As he deserves. So Jay Stein, law firm injury report. Julian Humphrey, the big injury that we saw, upper arm clavicle injury. Doesn't sound like he's going to be back anytime soon, maybe before the end of the year. Who knows about that? Warren Brinson, your boy Brinson, left with a calf injury. Don't think that's serious. I think we'll be back on the field. Tennessee, JDJ still out. They're trying to get creative, getting him back on the field. Who knows what that looks like? My favorite, though, was when Ladd went out and we were with our friend Sean Traub, and his brother Darren texted, said he's out with a laceration on his leg. Well, okay, fine, whatever. Turns out it was a twisted ankle. So I don't know where he got the laceration information. And then I'll add Jackson Dart, who got absolutely pancaked and tattooed between two defenders and looked like he just got straight concussed. Sounds like he's doing okay. He could have gone back into the game if he needed, but at that point, there was no point.
Yeah, so there's no effing way Jackson Dart could have gone back in the game. Jackson Dart thought he was in Oxford, Mississippi after that. And in fact, I actually felt really bad for him. And I thought it was scary because homeboy was knocked out. He was out cold on the field for a few minutes. They said it was like a shoulder or a collarbone. Maybe it was in addition to just getting knocked the F out. But I hope he's okay. And it was kind of scary. He got smacked.
He may have thought he was in Oxford, England, Gans.
Seriously,
Zion Logue hit him so hard that the big fella knocked himself out a little bit too. Is he not showing up on the injury report? Thank goodness.
No, he's good. Your boy's good.
Did you notice though after that they put in their backup quarterback who I know nothing about, and their center? I mean, I don't know if he's like 5 inches shorter than Jackson Dart because he damn near snapped the ball over a guy's head about 5 times in a row.
Quarterback was getting so pissed too. Every time he threw his hands up in the air, like, what the hell are you doing? So the day started with Michigan versus Penn State. Of course, Michigan has dominated the headlines all week leading up to, was it Friday or Saturday morning? They announced that Harbaugh, your boy Harbaugh, was going to be suspended. That guy is just one shit show after the next. But I watched the first half of that Michigan-Penn State game. I'd say Penn State is more not good than Michigan is good. Big Ten football is just ridiculous to watch. Apologies to all you Big Ten fans out there, but you watch that game versus an SEC game, it just looks different. So I will say that Michigan got the win and they were on the road and, bouquets them, I guess. Were y'all impressed?
Go ahead first, Larry, because I got
listen, not impressed. They talk about how great the defenses are in the Big Ten, but are they really that good, or is it just the offenses are completely inept? Penn State canned their offensive coordinator as soon as the game was over. Michigan, I don't think threw a single forward pass in the second half. They turned the game of football back to 1939 with student body left, student body right. Now, granted, they have two really good running backs, but they didn't throw a pass in the second half. That just goes to show how unafraid of the Penn State offense they were. Pillow fight, classic Big Ten pillow fight.
I was doing my post Morgan Wallen swole session on my new treadmill at my house, just trying to sweat out the toxins from the night before. So I booked some serious time on that treadmill. Not a great swole session, but I got the job done. Nonetheless, I had that game on in front of me. While running on the treadmill, I almost fell asleep and fell off the goddamn thing. It was one of the most boring games. It's the most Michigan football I've watched this year, and color me unimpressed. The first thing that came to my mind watching both Michigan and Penn State is slow. The team looked very similar to the team we absolutely stomped in the Orange Bowl a couple of years ago. They are just a slow. It's a slow brand of football all the way around. Blake Corum put up nice numbers, 150 yards, 146 yards rushing. He looked slow. He's their speed guy. He looked slower than Kendall Milton. Donovan Edwards looked slow. JJ McCarthy, unimpressive to me. Maybe they're playing the long con also, but and Penn State, to talk about that, what a bunch of frauds Penn State is. Penn State's in the SEC, and they're a 6-6 team. James Franklin sucks. Never liked the guy. He's terrible. And I'm just going to apologize right off the rip here to the loyal listeners of last call here. I had Drew Allard in New York as a Heisman finalist. I bought into the preseason hype. There was a lot of talking heads saying he's the next Josh Allen. He sucks.
I love it, man. That's a good closing argument. I got your theme. Your theme was slow, huh? Can you imagine if a team ran 20 straight running plays against a Kirby Smart defense? Like, is that really going to work come the playoff game?
And I might be skipping ahead here, but while we're talking about them, Missouri would beat both of those teams by 10 points.
How about them taking out Tennessee? Where does that leave Tennessee for next week against us? Because they got their ass kicked.
Broken. Listen, going into Neyland Stadium is always tough. I'm glad we're playing at 3:30, not at night. But I think that team is broken. I watched a good amount of that. They got their ass kicked. Absolutely. More so, not knocking Tennessee. I was super impressed with Missouri. Watching Missouri 2 weeks in a row, that is a legit top 10 team. That running back is
Prater.
Awesome. Yes, he's probably the best running back in the SEC, not named Jaden Daniels. But he was great. That team is great. They're well coached. They're a tough team. They would crush both of those Big Ten teams. Tennessee, I don't know. Joe Milton still sucks. We've said it all season. Georgia's now, I think, a 10-point favorite. I know that's Larry's territory. I like the Dogs big time. If we want to get into that, we could get into that.
We'll get back to them, but let me contrast Tennessee going in the wrong direction. I mean, it's still going to be a tough game, and you can't sleep on them. With Alabama, that frankly is just starting to really flex their muscle. Their quarterback is putting up some ridiculous numbers week after week. They took it to Kentucky. We have a date with them the first week of December, but they got to be on the radar.
I think Georgia and Alabama have followed similar trajectories this season. Both teams breaking in new quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe is at the point where he's no longer an athlete playing quarterback. He's actually a good quarterback now. And he's a freak athlete too. I would say at this point, Georgia and Alabama probably look like the two best teams in the country the way they're playing currently. And in terms of the Mizzou-Tennessee game, Jason, agree 100%. Missouri stepped up. They heard me call the sucker bet on them last week, and they totally just gave me a Degeneration X suck it, and they just took Tennessee behind the woodshed. Now, where it scares me a little bit is now Tennessee is in a point where they have nothing. They have nothing to lose, right? They can just go crazy, pull everything out of Josh Heupel's bag of tricks. Now that means Joe Milton's probably going to throw the ball out of the stadium. But if they can't stop Schrader, how are they going to stop our, eight-headed monster of offensive weapons?
So yeah, talking about Alabama for a second, totally agree. They've certainly, and I was very bearish on them at the beginning of the season, and rightfully so. Like, let's not forget, they benched Milroe because he sucked. And he has really improved throughout the season. I disagree with Laurence in the sense that he's becoming a complete quarterback. He is not sucking as bad as he sucked in terms of throwing the ball. He is a freak athlete for sure, and that's something that the Dogs are going to have to account for. I don't know, fortunately, Kirby's a lot smarter than me when it comes to scheming up defenses. That has been one of our weaknesses, though, historically, is containing a mobile quarterback. But what I would put back to you fine fellas is just looking at the Alabama offense and looking at the Georgia offense. Do you think they're in the same league? Because I don't.
We discussed this in the beginning. Who would you take in the top 22 from Alabama and put on Georgia's team? And I think that discussion remains the same. Having said that, I kind of agree with you that Alabama and Georgia look like the two best teams in the country. In fact, jumping ahead to our top four, I know they're not going to be in the top four, but I've got Alabama in my top 4 right now. I think they've earned their place. I mean, if you put Alabama versus Michigan versus Ohio State versus Florida State versus Washington on a neutral field, who do y'all think is going to be favored? Alabama.
Of course, and I totally agree with you. You're 100% right. They, if you're picking the best 4 teams today, as of November 13th, they are one of the best 4. Unfortunately, that's not how the college football playoff. That they lost to a Texas team. They have gotten significantly better. I think if they played Texas again today in Tuscaloosa, that they would beat them. I think they beat Texas on a neutral field. I think they're trending in the right direction, but they've got that blemish, and
Yeah.
it's going to be tough to bounce back from.
FSU, Washington both survived. They keep winning, right? I mean, you keep waiting for one of these teams to get knocked off. FSU slips out of there against Miami. Washington takes down the Utes, but look, they're still right there. I mean, they're both going to be in the top 5 until otherwiise.
The Washington game was interesting. They did have that pick 6 where the big fella dropped the ball on the 3-yard line. Thank goodness that didn't come back to haunt them. Miami, like, not serious people. Florida State struggled with them again. Florida State will be in the top 4 come tomorrow night when it comes out. But yes, on a neutral field right now, Alabama would be favored against them. Ohio State would be favored against them. I just don't think they're very good, but they're going to finish undefeated. Nobody in the ACC can beat them.
Well, so they're going to finish the regular season undefeated. I mean, maybe Sunbelt Billy can pull something out of his ass and beat them. I don't think that's going to happen. Who are they going to play in the ACC championship? Louisville?
And so ACC doesn't do divisions anymore. It's just the top 2 teams. So it'll be Louisville most likely.
I could see Florida State losing. They are vulnerable, but they definitely have the easiest path at this point into the playoff of any of the top 6 teams. Be interesting to see what happens in the Pac-12 championship game, right? Because they're just doing. Are they doing divisions? Or are they doing the top 2 now?
It'll be Washington versus Oregon. Assume neither of those 2 teams slip up in the next 2 weeks.
You hope, assuming they both finish. Oregon 1 loss and Washington no. You hope Oregon wins. Create a little chaos there, because here's a really shitty scenario that I don't even want to put this bad juju out there.
I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going.
I mean, Dogs finished 12-0. We lose, and I don't think we will, loyal listeners, but we lose 31-28 to Alabama in the SEC championship game, and we get knocked out. I don't think that would happen. I don't think we're going to lose, but that would really suck.
Sure. FSU undefeated, Michigan or Ohio State undefeated, Washington undefeated, and then Alabama SEC champ. You can see that scenario. Absolutely. We need loss chaos.
The playoff committee, I think, is firmly cheering for Georgia to not have to get into that situation. Because if you end up with a 13-0 Michigan or Ohio State, a 13-0 FSU, a 13-0 UGA, then the question is, who gets that 4th spot? Is it a 12-1 Big 12 champion Texas, or is it 12-1 Oregon if they beat Washington? Those are going to the playoff committee potentially is going to have some really tough decisions to make. This will be. And the other funny thing I saw that was interesting, that this being the last year of 4 teams in the playoffs, it has a possibility with not that many upsets to actually match the first playoff that included Florida State, Oregon, Alabama, and Ohio State.
Yeah.
It was the first 4 playoff.
That doesn't happen.
Ever.
So here's my prediction is this is actually it's going to play out and be a lot easier for the committee than we think. It usually does. When was the last time there was really a tough decision, and someone get left out? I think it's going to play out. Like I said, Florida State's got the easiest path in right now. But besides that, we'll see.
There's a lot of football left. There'll be upsets. There'll be chaos that happens. Championship Saturday, it always does. So other than Georgia, I think my favorite game / score / just whatever of the week was Iowa with the 28-point over under, scoring 22 shockingly, and the under still hitting. Laurence, you had to love that game.
I mean, every week they make the over-under lower and lower and lower for Iowa, and every week it hits the under. It's not that the Big Ten has these amazing defenses. It has offenses that are moving the game. They're moving the game of football back in time. It's disappointing. This week, Iowa plays Illinois, It's in Iowa, and it's a over under 30.5. So they finally bumped it up a notch.
Hammer the under.
Until otherwise, you have to, right?
You're playing with house money.
So funny. All right, man. I've been waiting for 2 years to be able to say this to you, Mr. Jason Gans. Jimbo Fisher has been terminated for an out of drink as the head coach of Texas A&M. I don't even know where to start with you, man. You can do whatever you want with it. I've got the numbers of his buyout, but I'm going to give you the benefit of reporting however you want, because this is your segment, man.
The most apropos thing with this whole firing, which we've been calling for the life of this show, is that jackass got fired after winning 52-10. He won 14 points and then got fired, which there's a story behind that. But I mean, how fitting is that? So I'm going to say this, and it's probably the only nice thing I've ever said about Jimbo Fisher. Shit, I'm just jealous of Jimbo Fisher right now. He's getting paid $77.6 million to go fuck off, right? I'm not going to mention who my employer is, but if they want to do that to me, we could part amicably very quickly.
I wish you well in your future endeavors.
Yeah. So Jimbo is right now, he's probably got a smile ear to ear. He's the happiest guy in the state of Texas. I mean, this was the most predictable thing ever coming. The guy was stealing money from Texas A&M for really the past 3 or 4 years. I think his coaching career is over. He's squirrely. I can't see him ever on TV. I just assume we've seen the last of Jimbo Fisher forever. Good riddance. Good night.
As the great Coach O said, show me which door to leave out of and what time you want me gone. Yeah. That's what Jimbo's response should have been. That's what my response should have been. And I will give credit to our friends at SEC Shorts. They had a little great 4-minute clip today. There was a flashback to Jimbo's hiring and then talking to the Zoltar future telling machine. It was great. Will be interesting. I mean, listen, $77 million buyout. Let's just go say they hire somebody like a Dan Lanning. They're now going to have to pay an additional $20 million buyout on his contract, and then pay whatever the new coach is another $7, $8, $9 million a year. This is an expensive proposition the Aggies have in front of them.
They're more buyouts though with the staff too. That doesn't include they owe more money. The best part about this whole thing, which is kind of back to the point I said, there are no offsets in it either. So he gets $19 million within 60 days. And then he gets, I wrote it down, it's like 7 million, 7.1 million, 7.2 million through 2031. I mean, can we just forget about Bobby Bonilla now? We've got the Jimbo Fisher day of the year. And no offset. So if someone's dumb enough to hire this moron, he can collect that money too and doesn't have to give back anything.
All I'll say is I want to be the Jimbo of the week every week until 2031.
Yeah, so
I'm in.
Whatever the anti-Jimbo of the week is that award goes to Jimmy Sexton for negotiating this ridiculous contract, the dumbest contract in the history of all sports.
I watched a little bit of the press conference with the A&M AD last night, and he said he wasn't the AD when Jimbo got hired. True. But when they gave him this ridiculous extension, the old AD, Scott Woodward, had just gone to LSU, and that was, I guess, after Coach O left, and they were afraid, and this was coming off of the 2020 season or whatever it was, they thought that Woodward was going to go after Jimbo, and so Jimmy Sexton bent him over backwards and took full advantage of it. So Scott Woodward, hey, man, kudos to you. You got Jimbo paid. You got Texas A&M irrelevant. And, well, you end up with Brian Kelly, so you got your own problems. But, hey, he worked it.
You want to hear the best part of this whole thing? Of how inept that university is this is all going into next year. Well, guess who comes to the SEC? Their biggest rivals, Texas. So now they're not the only SEC school there either. It will be interesting, though, to see who they hire. I predict that they screwed up and they hire someone who just flounders in mediocrity again. But look, there are some big names out there. I don't know if Dan Lanning would leave for that. He'd be my first call.
I was going to say that we traded some text messages today about that. Dan Lanning is the name. He's going to be on the hot name for every big job that comes up, as he deserves. He should be. I'd say to Oregon if I were him, man. I'd rack up I'd rack up a couple more good seasons. I know that y'all mentioned flying out to New Jersey to play Rutgers on a random Saturday. It isn't ideal, but who cares? They're flying nice accommodations.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
They're
not,
not.
I'm not, I'm not going to that crazy ass town, College Station, Texas A&M. I mean, it's not like that program is like uber storied. Like, what the hell they ever won? I mean, I remember R.C. Slocum back in the day and Jackie Sherrill and whoever the hell else they've had, but they've never won anything. Shit, we get into too much time already. Let's move on to the other school in the SEC West that lost their coach today too, Mississippi State. It's coaching carousel season, boys.
Hot stove season, baby. Mississippi State one, that'll be interesting. There's already a lot of talk about Glenn Schumann being on their hot list. If I'm Coach Schumann, Gans, I think you said earlier, like, is that the job you really want, or do you wait for something a little bit bigger to come up? There was also talk about Schumann being on the hot list for being the USC defensive coordinator. I think there's no way he would make that lateral move out there. In terms of A&M, some other names you see out there is Lance Leipold from Kansas, Elko from Duke. And then the funny things you see coming from the message board genius site, like they want Urban Meyer, they want Harbaugh, they want Dabo Swinney. It's going to be, I can't wait to watch the flight trackers going in and out of College Station. And then Mississippi State, they'll end up with somebody decent. I mean, I also saw Bobo's name being tossed around there. So who knows?
I don't. So look, Texas A&M. I mean, I think they proved they have unlimited resources when it comes to buying people out. It'll be if I'm hiring and I'm Texas A&M, and I know we're going away from conferences, or I'm sorry, divisions within the SEC. Look, I want to get on the Saban tree, right? And I want to see, can we find the next Kirby Smart? Right now, Dan Lanning seems to be that, right? That's where I was going with that. Glenn Schumann will end up with a big job at some point. I think, this is just me speculating, is that he's going to follow a Kirby Smart route and not jump at the first job, like a Mississippi State job. I think if Texas A&M wanted to hire Glenn Schumann, he would go. They don't, because they're going to go for a big splashy name. But that's what I do in terms of like Mississippi State. I almost feel bad for them, right? You lose the Pirate last year, which was obviously awful. They just kind of promoted this guy. The name I heard today too, Dan Mullen.
Dan Mullen. That's what I was going to say. If I'm them, I'm hiring Dan Mullen. What do you have to
do? Go 7-5 every year. He'll be a god there. I mean, like we talked about with Sam Pittman, who's probably on the hot seat and probably going to get toasted soon. What are your expectations at Mississippi State? Right, 7-5, 8-4. A good year, 9-3, and beat Saban once. Like that is a huge success. If I'm them, right? They're not going 11-1. They're not going 12-0. It's not happening.
Yeah. They were ranked number 1 in the first college football playoff ranking, though, if you remember back that far. Right? They had Dak Prescott and Dan Mullen. So if I'm them, I agree. I think that's the right hire. He knows what he's getting into. He can manage the program. He'll get 8 wins, 9 wins, maybe have a magical season where he, gets to 10. Doubtful, but maybe.
UGA, Tennessee, we discussed it a little bit. Let's just talk a little bit more about it. My favorite message that has been traded between us this weekend was the UT fan that's convinced that Kirby Smart controls the weather now. Did y'all see that?
Yeah.
That Knoxville faithful are claiming that, hey, the last 2 big games that Georgia's had against high-octane offenses, Kirby made it rain. Kirby literally is Mother Nature now. We have that much real estate in these folks' heads that they think that Kirby controls the rain. The other thing I saw that made me smile is that, do y'all see who Tennessee is promoting as who's going to be in the house Saturday night?
Yes.
Parton. Dolly Parton. Is that who they think is going to hype these people up? Kirby's got the Migos and Ludacris and Quavo, and they're rolling out 80-year-old Dolly Parton and her double Ds. What the F is going on?
I feel like, well, Gan said earlier, they're broken. It sounds like everything in Knoxville is broken. Apparently, Kirby Smart and Fred Ridley are the only 2 people on the planet that can control the weather with their chemtrails and vapor trails. And I saw Dolly's Twitter announcement today that she's going to be at Neyland Stadium. We're the better team. This team is not nearly, the Tennessee team is not nearly as good as the team they had last year. They have 0 weapons at wide receiver after losing 2 guys to the NFL, and then Brew McCoy with an injury earlier. They got my man Squirrel in the backfield, and they have Joe Milton, who Kirby claimed today. He said he has elite arm talent. And he also claimed that their punter was elite because he's a rugby style Aussie punter who can actually punt both right footed and left footed. So
he's a bye punter.
He's amphibious.
The only thing that scares me is they have nothing to lose and they want revenge and their field sucks and people get hurt all the time.
All right. So the thing that scares me the most is their field sucks and people get hurt all the time. So I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win 40-23 is my prediction. I think our offense is clicking on all cylinders. You're going to hear all week that they haven't lost at home in 2 years. The last team they lost to at home 2 years ago was Kirby Smart's future national championship team. I mean, I just look at the common. I like to look at common opponents. So we've got 4 thus far. And they beat 2 of them, South Carolina, and a broken Kentucky team, but barely. They barely beat a broken Kentucky team. They got kind of throttled by a horrible Florida team, and then we already talked about the Mizzou game. I just think there's too much firepower with Georgia's offense right now. I think it's a business trip. We go in there 40-23. Just to hit on one quick thing, they might be right. Kirby might control the weather.
Controls everything else.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious to me. So going back to the way you started the show, Laurence, about the biggest compliment a team can get is that Georgia actually gives a shit to get up and play for them. And I guess that's what we'll see. Does Tennessee make that list? I can see a little bit of a letdown. I hate to say it. I can see 28-21, 28-20, something like that. I do think we win, but I think it might be closer than the experts think.
Go ahead, Laurence.
I'm with you, Josh. The line opened up a little bit too low for my liking. 7.5. Now it's up to 10. It's just a little bit of a weird line. So I think maybe it is closer than we think. Maybe 30-20, 28-20 type game. I think we win. We're the better team. We should probably be a 13-point favorite, but who knows?
I just don't see them. One more thing I forgot to mention. I did write it down. What's What's Tennessee's most impressive win this season?
Crickets.
It's not impressive. It's against Texas A&M, and I think we all watched that game, 20-13 at home. They were lucky to pull out a squeaker, right? So that was your 3:30 CBS game earlier in the season when everyone in Knoxville was hype and they still thought they had something. I just don't see any way that they could contain our offense. I don't even like saying 20. Whose offense is better? Ole Miss or Tennessee? Granted, we got Ole Miss in Athens, and we got to go there. I feel like 23. I might be eating my words, and we could hold them to 14 points. I feel good about this one.
So one thing that I found interesting is this was, going to Knoxville was a game that a lot of people circled beginning of the year, Georgia Knoxville, and the ticket prices were through the effing roof. Yeah. Get in. I looked today just out of curiosity, and they're actually not that expensive anymore. I think that tells you a lot about, kind of where this game stands in Knoxville's view. I think Georgia fans are still going to go. I'd be interesting to see what kind of crowd we take there, but the ticket price is much cheaper. Found that kind of interesting. All right.
What is the get-in price right now?
$175 for what I would say fairly decent tickets.
SEC championship game is not going to be cheap. And then hopefully we've got to shell out a few shekels for a couple more games after that.
Yeah, SEC game. I mean, that's going to be the biggest SEC championship game in years, right? Because as we pointed out, like it kind of could be an elimination game. So we'll see.
Well, root for Auburn. Root for Auburn to beat Alabama and drive prices down.
I love it. Sucker Bet of the week, Laurence. Watching game day, I did this weekend for the first time probably all year. Of course, it was in Athens. They did a lot of Georgia segments, so I got a little more feel for what they got going on. So their expert picker is that Steve, whatever his name is,
Stanford Steve. He stinks.
He stinks, dude. His record, I wrote it down, 16, 26, and 2. You need to get your resume over to Kirby and the boys. I mean, at least you're 500.
Well, I was thinking we could do 2 things. One is we could send a combined resume over to the Texas A&M AD, and the 3 of us can be co-head coaches, and then we can Jimbo ourselves out of a job and just be full-time podcasters when it's all said and done. And then 2, the sucker bet. Yeah. So I would love to sit here and say that it was an intentional mush that I picked Missouri. I picked Tennessee knowing that they would just get their ass kicked and seal the East for us. But alas, that was not what I was doing. I just thought it was a weird line because I thought Missouri should have been favored at home against what I don't think is a very good Tennessee team. So 5-7, I got some work to do to close out and get back up to 500. There's a couple games that jumped out at me. Louisville is -2 on the road at Miami, which I thought Louisville should probably be favored by a little bit more. And then Mizzou is at home versus Florida, and they're only a 10.5-point favorite. And Florida just continues to get boat raced. I mean, they gave up a record, something that's never been done before, to Jaden Daniels this past weekend with 300 yards passing and 200 yards rushing. I mean, what's Brady Cook going to do against him? What's Schrader going to do? What's Luther Burden going to do against his Florida team? I thought the line probably should have been closer to probably 14 or 17. But I'm not going to go against my Mizzou Tigers again this week. I'm going to go ahead and say Louisville is a sucker. I'm going to take Miami plus the 2, and Mario is going to pull off an upset and just cause a little bit more chaos in the ACC.
I will say this. We all play a lot of ping pong. When the score is 7-5, it's a huge swing point because 8-5 and 7-6 are two entirely different games. So you are at that point right now. You're 5-7. You lose this one, 5-8. You can't come back from.
That's
6-7. You're right there. So
it's do or die, baby.
I want you to really be confident in this pick because your whole season, in my opinion, rests on this one.
Listen, it's Monday. There's a lot that can happen. I spent about 38 seconds looking at the lines today, and I'm taking Miami.
Here comes the hedge.
I'm taking Miami.
For the record, you're putting your cojones on the line for a previous Jimbo of the Week winner, who took that down in an egregious fashion. So just FYI.
You know what? I know about the Jimbos? They're unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get from week to week with them.
Speaking of which, what do we do on our namesake's biggest day of his life?
So I think I thought about that also. We might have to open this up for listeners' input in terms of do we retire this? Do we retire the Jimbo of the week? There's no more Jimbo, and I just already told you Jimbo's the smartest guy I know right now.
Right.
So
you put the script.
This week, I'm giving out the Jimbo Lifetime Achievement Award. And we're gonna have to do some serious thinking over the week. Maybe we just finish out the season and rename it next year. But the Jimbo Lifetime Achievement Award, and this is extremely predictable, goes to Ross Bjork, who you didn't name, Laurence. I thought you were going to. I was glad you didn't. Who is the current AD at Texas A&M and is the one who signed off on the worst contract in the history of sports of all time ever. Like, this guy should be in the category with the GM of the Yankees that traded Babe Ruth for a bushel for $100,000 or whatever it is. This is Ross Bjork gets the Jimbo Lifetime Achievement Award, and we might not have another Jimbo Award. I don't know. We need to
shut it down, huh? Just shut it down.
That's a great one. I thought you were going to go with somebody like Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy to get boat raced by Gus Malzahn, or potentially Clemson, they're Clemson fans who stormed the field after beating a 5-4 Georgia Tech team.
So about that, I thought you'd go that direction too, based on some of our text messages. But doesn't Clemson just do that on the reg? Isn't that their thing, that after home victories they make their way onto the field? And that wasn't special for Georgia Tech, was it?
I don't know. We did give them the Jimbo of the Week 1 week for storming the field against somebody else. Maybe they do that. It's ridiculous if they do. They should definitely change that.
Well, boys, I appreciate y'all going a little longer than usual. Just too much to talk about. But before we wrap up, I do want to go off topic a little bit and just rehash the Morgan Wallen Friday night concert. It was me, Isabella, Laurence, Sam, Jason, your two girls, Caroline and Charlotte. I mean, I thought it was a freaking blast. We rolled into the Battery about 4:30, 4:45, started off at Antico, ordered some pizzas. Thank you, Mr. Gans, for picking those up. We got one pizza too many, and it got me thinking that if I'm a teenage kid, I'm hanging out Friday nights at that green space. We gave Isabella's friends we ran into a whole pizza. People were just giving pizzas away to those dudes. So pro tip right there. And then getting into the stadium, Bailey Zimmerman, I give him an A. Parker McCollum came on next. I give him an F. I'm sorry, that might be harsh. I did not enjoy him. And then there was a long downtime, which none of us really liked. But then once your boy Wallen came on about 9:20, the guy just went. He just went until a little after 11, sang every song, every word. He gets after it. He does it right. I give the whole night a 10.
Great performer. We got some pyrotechnics going on. We opened up with with what is Lil Uzi or Lil Durk, with a little
Broadway
rap to
Girls.
start off. He Broadway Girls. He puts on a really good show. I wish they would have reordered things a little bit. That Bailey Zimmerman led into Morgan Wallen as opposed to having Parker McCollum in between. The 90-minute delay in between, I mean, gosh, that was a lot. If I had to do it all over again, I would have walked into Truist at 8:45, probably skipped all the openers. I find the Battery to be a really great place to host a concert just because of all the amenities around there. Obviously, close to where we all live. Inside the stadium, they need to do a little bit better job of maintaining the beer selection and reducing the bathroom lines during a concert. I think they manage it really well during a Braves game, but when they have the overload of people for a concert, it gets to be a massive shit show in there.
It was awesome. I agree with everything all you guys said. Bailey Zimmerman was awesome. He was rocking a Braves jersey too, which was fantastic. He was great. I agree with Parker McCollum and two knocks. And by the way, this really didn't detract from the night. One is the 90 minutes in between. That had to have been some sort of screw up in between Parker McCollum and Morgan Wallen coming on. And two, get rid of Svedka. I paid $35 for a double Svedka. And my liver's been hurting ever since. Can we change that up, Truist?
$35 vodkas, $24 Miller Lights. What did we pay for the Pacificos in SoFi?
Those are like 18. They were
like mini kegs though, the Pacificos.
Same thing with the Miller Lights. We were getting 24 ounces, but they were like $24. You're paying like $1 an ounce there.
Yeah, so good. So good. All right, guys. And Laurence, thank you for hosting us on Saturday night. I will say Robert Enow brought an amazing smorgasbord of food topped off by a Korean barbecue steak cheesecake, chicken cheesesteak. I mean, he had a little bit of it all from Fred's. Travels pretty well, no?
Fred's cheesesteaks were delicious. We had the original, and then we had the Korean chicken cheesesteak. Very, very good. Ordered some pizzas and wings from Blue Moon, who, by the way, Blue Moon Wings, I find to be vastly underrated. They do a really good job with their wing game. And then we topped it off with some crumble cookies. So it was a high calorie consumption day. I enjoyed a bunch of Terramana tequila, some what do we call this stuff? Sugarland Shine moonshine straight out of Gatlinburg. All in all, a great Saturday, a great Friday, a great Saturday, a great Sunday, solid weekend.
Like I said, some weekends hit different. This one just hit different. All right, guys. Good stuff as always. Appreciate y'all listening. On to Knoxville. All right. Appreciate it listening. Until next time, go Dogs. Keep chopping. Peace.
Dogs.